Do you have a fear of being exposed as a fraud? Do you struggle with insecurity or feel like you don't belong in the big rooms? Maybe you even feel like your friends or romantic partner is out of your league. These are all things that we are going to be exploring in this episode. And I am going to be doing that with a very special guest who is going to help me delve into this topic. And I'm so excited. I can't going to match her energy today. She has like amazing energy. Victoria Jenn Rodriguez is a master mindset and business consultant and international speaker. The Latina is also the force behind Banking on Cultura podcast. Welcome, Victoria Jenn. How are you?
I'm fabulous. I'm very excited about what we're going to be talking about today and
Oh,
super excited
absolutely.
to be here.
Oh, I know it's such an important topic, and you're going to help us sort of demystify what is imposter syndrome and how can we unlock our full potential, because it is closely related, correct?
Yes. But the way I like to always start my conversation when it comes to imposter syndrome is by letting people know like there's nothing wrong with you. We hear the word syndrome and we automatically assume like, oh, this is a bad thing. If I have this, like I'm not like everybody else. I'm slacking. Like I need to get out of this funk. And there are many examples that we'll talk about today about why having imposter syndrome is actually a really good thing and a signal that you are expanding, coloring outside the lines, and you are challenging yourself. And we know when we put ourselves in those type of situations, it's how we grow.
And I do want to ask you about this. So you are also the CEO of Dare to Leap Academy, an online education program platform helping women transition from corporate to entrepreneurship. How often do you see imposter syndrome?
Well, over 70% of
That's what I thought.
professionals experience
Yeah.
imposter syndrome, and for women and women of color, that triples. So it is something
Wow.
that is a part of all of us, regardless how confident you are, regardless of how successful you are, regardless of how many accolades you have. It is a very human trait for you to experience imposter syndrome.
And correct me if I'm wrong. I know from my experience, right? So I have been there. I used to step into these rooms and I didn't feel like I belonged, with people with all the titles and all the power and all the influence. I felt small. I can't lie. And I doubted myself. I lacked confidence to speak my mind. I wouldn't even speak up in meetings because I felt like, what am I doing here? These people are, sometimes I thought, are they smarter than me? Like all these things that I was experiencing. And I didn't know that was isn't that sort of imposter syndrome?
So, imposter syndrome, in its most simplest form, is when, regardless of how much education you have, regardless of where you were raised, your income level, your position in society, when you walk into a room, you feel like a fraud. You feel like you didn't do enough uh, in order to be thankful to be in those rooms, right? You didn't do enough in order to have the opportunity to be in that space. And so you begin to feel like you're a fraud, like you mentioned earlier, like you're the imposter. That's why it's called
Yeah.
imposter syndrome, right?
Uh,
You're the
uh,
imposter.
but I did also, when I recognized or began to recognize the behavior, I sort of started doing things to make that mindset shift. Of course, I can't not say that there wasn't therapy involved. There was therapy involved as well. Um, but I started to believe in myself. And the more I believed in myself, the more opportunities came and the more confidence I gained.
I like to call it badassery. You stepped into your badassery. That's what you did. I want to start with why you're experiencing it, especially if you're a person of color. When you think about where our families come from and the societal norms we've had to fit into in order to succeed in what we've been preconditioned to believe is success, right? Go to school, then get the job and put your head down, just collect your check, get your benefits, retire, and that's it. That's life, right? That's the path that you're supposed to follow, right? And so for years, even our ancestors have been fighting for their identity, right? They've been fighting to be seen, they've been fighting to be heard, and that translates to generation down to next generation, etc. So we are carrying a lot of that preconditioning into every room that we go into, right? And it takes work in order for you to get comfortable in your own skin and in order for you to truly believe that you are deserving and you are meant to be in those spaces. So I want to make sure that there's an understanding of why you are experiencing this imposter syndrome.
How can it hinder us from reaching our full potential?
Sure. So in its most simplest form, imposter syndrome is regardless of the accolades that you've achieved, regardless of your income levels, regardless of your status in culture, regardless of your tax bracket, whatever it is, regardless of all the wins, you still feel like you're undeserving to be in certain spaces. And you begin to feel like a fraud. Like, actually, do I belong here? Like, did I do enough to earn this seat at the table? And you start feeling like an imposter, right? That's where the term phrase comes from, right? You start feeling like, ooh, like, okay, hold on. Somebody's going to get me. Somebody's going to find me out. I don't belong here.
Expose me.
Exactly. Someone's going to expose me. And what I really like to drive home for folks is imposter syndrome is very much a human trait, is completely normal. If you've experienced it, you're normal. Over 70% of professionals are experiencing it. Women of color, 3 times more than that. So it means you're human. So that's a good sign. But what it also means is that you are challenging yourself and you're entering new spaces that are making you uncomfortable. And when we are uncomfortable, it's when we grow. I always like to give the analogy of when you go to the gym and you have a crazy ass leg day, right? Crazy ass leg day. In the moment, you hate it. You're like, oh my God, how annoying. The next day, it's like difficult for you to like sit down, use the restroom, all the things. You guys know what I'm talking about. And after a few times of you doing that, you pass the mirror and you're like, oh, wow, my booty is popping. Like the work is paying off. So it is the same thing with imposter syndrome. It is a muscle that you have to target, that you have to exercise. And you should know that people that I admire, like Jennifer Lopez, Sheryl Sandberg, Michelle Obama, Tony Robbins, they all have recently said that they experience imposter syndrome. So what that should signal to you is that A, you're not alone, but also B, people who are the most successful and confident are experiencing imposter syndrome. It's not a syndrome at all. It is very much an innate human response to entering new spaces. So I want you guys to hold on to that. And I also have a framework to help people address imposter syndrome if you want me to cover that.
Well, one of the things I think it's important to point out is how do you know? How do you know you have this? You're having this, I call it an experience, but how do you know that you're experiencing imposter syndrome?
Yeah. So the best way to know is if you're feeling uncomfortable, like that's a sign. If you know you deserve to be in this space, but for some reason you're like, well, maybe I don't. Like you're questioning your expertise, you're questioning your authority, you're questioning your power, your badassery. Like, hold on a second. You know you put in the sweat equity, you have the receipts, but yet you still feel like you don't belong. Those are the best ways for you to like really identify, like, oh wait, hold on. I'm experiencing some imposter syndrome right now.
And how do you begin the work to, you know, sort of remove yourself from that space? For me personally, I find that I can't, not constantly, I regularly check in with myself because I feel that as I level up, I enter bigger spaces and it can sneak up on me sometimes if I'm not careful. So how do you work with, how do you do that work to sort of relieve that experience and I think give yourself, cut yourself a break. because
Yeah,
it's a
give
lot
yourself some
sometimes.
grace, give yourself some grace. Like, you're human. Like, it's okay to be human. Okay. It's okay for you to feel not like yourself. It's okay. It actually is good. That means you're alive. That means you're feeling things. Thank God, right? But the first step is really first know that nothing's wrong with you, right? There's nothing wrong with you. And if you have to say that to yourself in the mirror, then say it. There is nothing wrong with me. There is nothing wrong with me, right? Second is also keeping in mind, like those people that I mentioned, before I go into like a big meeting or I'm about to negotiate a deal, I always take on the energy and power of people that I admire, like Jennifer Lopez, who's somebody that
Mm.
I love. I'm like, okay, give me her aura, or Beyonce, give me her Sasha Fierce. Like, give me that energy so that I can remind myself of who the hell I am, right? And the most important part of this is self-awareness. Just like everything that you do in your
Mm.
life, we can't be delulu. Like, we can't be delusional
Oh,
about
a little bit, a little bit.
well, I mean, delulu, I feel like it's connected to magic and it's connected to dreaming. So yes, but the more self-aware you are, the more positioned you will be to prepare for moments when imposter syndrome comes up. And the best way for you to know that is for you to journal. Like, write down,
Mm.
when is imposter syndrome coming up for you? Is it before a big speech, before you get into a boardroom? Is it when you're about to have a difficult conversation with your boss or your boo? Like, when does it come up, so that you know, okay, I need to prepare for this. I know this is going to make me uncomfortable. Okay, so that's first step.
Okay.
Second step, I like to make sure that you have what I like to call a badassery committee. And this is made up of 5 to 7 people that you trust, that you respect, that know your story and know your power, know your expertise, know the sweat equity you've put in, and understand that you are very much deserving to be in any space that you are in. You've earned it. And having them on this committee, which is a very prestigious role, like, you literally let these people know, like, hey, I'm about to put you on my badassery committee, okay? And let them know that this is a big deal, because these are the people you're going to call on when shit's hitting
Mm.
the fan, or when you need another pep talk, right? And if you don't have 5 to 7 people that you can call upon, then that's a signal that you need to start getting out there and networking. Like, you need to start building relationships with people, and you need to put yourself out there. Like, everyone should have this committee and have enough people in your world that you can identify and say, okay, yes, this person is on my badassery committee, right? The
Yep.
third part that I like to make sure people are doing is, I need you to mirror self talk. And what that means is, you are doing affirmations, you are talking to yourself in the mirror on a daily basis. Can I share something that's a really helpful exercise? Can I share
Oh,
that?
absolutely. Please.
All right. So, a really helpful exercise is, and I want you guys to challenge yourself to do this for the next 15 days consecutively, in the morning when you get up, and at night before you go to bed. I want you to find the 5 to 10 affirmations that really speak to you. And if you're like, well, I don't know, then Google it. Okay. The answers are there. Google it. But
There.
it can start with affirmations like, I am a badass. I'm going to have an amazing day. Or, I am deserving of making 6 figures, right? I am deserving of being a millionaire. I'm building a legacy, right? And speaking power to yourself. And you have to look at yourself in the mirror. Like, it's you against you always. Look at yourself in the mirror so that you can begin to believe what you are putting out into the universe, because just thinking it is not helpful. You need to actually speak it. You need to hear it. And there's this science backs this up. You need to hear yourself saying it, because it will increase your belief in yourself.
So not just writing it even, you have to speak it.
No, you have to speak it. You have to speak it. You need to hear your own voice. And you're also signaling to the universe, like, hey, I'm here. Like, line me up for all the opportunities. Line me up for all of the things. Like, let's go. Right? And talk to yourself. You should be your own best friend. Seriously, I truly believe that. Like, talk to yourself. Let's go.
I
It is not
I'm
crazy.
there with you. I used to think, okay, this is a little crazy. But then the more I did it, the more I felt it's almost like an energy, you know? It's it's reinforcement and it takes practice. I'm not
Yeah.
saying every day I can look at myself in the mirror and say, "Yes, you are amazing." Not really. I
But why
try.
not?
Well, some days, you feel off. I'm being honest here. This is like truth.
Yeah. But those are the
Some
days you need to do it the most. When you
Ah.
feel off, those are the days that you need to do it the most.
Well, that I'm gonna try it. I'm gonna have to
Yeah,
try it. But
try it.
I do want to point out because you mentioned something interesting. You said, about preparing yourself even when you're going to talk to your boo.
Mm-hmm.
So I want you to sort of talk to us a little bit about, so when you hear imposter syndrome, you kind of think, okay, this can affect me at work, in my business, but it can also affect you in your personal life, in your relationships. Can you share
Mm-hmm.
a little bit about that? Because I think that's important to point out.
Yeah, I mean, if you're single and you're on the dating scene, like you definitely feel it, especially if you've been single for a long period of time, or you're just involved in all types of shenanigans. You start to look at yourself and think that something's wrong with you. You're like, okay, well, what
Yeah.
is it me? Like, are these people acting this way because of me? Right? And
Yeah.
so it's important for you to really get comfortable in your own skin because it will be advantageous personally and professionally, right? And then if you're in a relationship already, if you think about it, if you have a partner, let's say you have a partner who's like ultra successful, they're contributing the most, they're just doing the most. It makes you start thinking about, wait, hold up. Like, am I not doing enough here? Even though you have your degrees, you're making money, you're contributing, right? But they're just doing more, and you feel like maybe I don't, like, I'm not good enough. Like, maybe I don't belong here, even though you have all the stripes under your belt, right? And so it can come up in so many different ways. And the best way for you to kind of combat that is to know that it's normal to experience, but also have this framework that I just shared with you. And there's one more part of it that I want to give you, and revert back. Like, revert back. Like, maybe you need to call your badassery committee and be like, yo, why am I feeling like I'm less than in my own relationship where I know this person is obsessed with
Mhm.
me? Why am I feeling less than? Right? And let them remind you
Mhm.
of who you are. Because regardless of how confident you are, how motivating you are, how often people come to you for coaching, how often people lean on you, you cannot pour from an empty cup. You also need to be filled, right? You also need to feel special. You also need to feel loved. You also need to feel powerful, especially in moments when you are feeling weak, right? You're feeling less than. It is so important for you to make sure that you have these tools in your treasure box that you can pick on so that you can like rebuild yourself again, right? And then the final part of
Absolutely.
the framework is celebrate small wins. And this is important because people apply
Ah.
so much pressure to themselves that unless I have the Mercedes Benz, I can't celebrate the fact that I just bought a new Honda that's fully loaded. Like, I can't because it's not a Mercedes Benz. But no, you can't, right? You can. It's important for you to celebrate the small wins, even making your bed every day, right? If that's
I'm
not
s-
true,
I'm
I
so
get it
glad
because
that
I
you
don't do
said
that every
that.
day. And I don't let nobody make me feel bad about that. I really do not see the point in making my bed every day. I'm about to lay back in that.
Wait, what? Okay, we're gonna have this conversation later.
Moving on. Moving
I,
on.
I
But
cannot move from my bedroom until I make that bed because
oh,
it's part of my, oh my God. It's
yeah,
just
I'm
part
good.
of my getting centered, getting grounded. I need to fix my bed, make sure that when I walk away, it's nice
I'm
and
good.
neat.
I don't need. I don't need to make my bed every day. I am good unless I have company coming over. Nobody is seeing that bed. Like, I am good. I am
I
good.
love I love it.
But if that's you and you do that every day, like, celebrate yourself. Like, celebrate the routine. Celebrate the small wins. Right? You got the
I
raise, but you didn't get the full raise. So what? Celebrate. right?
I love that you said that because I know I've been guilty of it. I can have a win, and as soon as I grab it in my hands, I'm already thinking, okay, what's the next win? I don't even give I was telling my girlfriend the other day, I said I don't celebrate myself enough. I'm just doing, and I think that does impact you in the long run because you start feel like you're not doing enough. You're not doing enough.
Yep.
And so you're right. It's critical, I think, to do that.
It is. And I call it's the gift and the curse of the ambitious, right? The gift
Oh,
is
share.
you're a mover shaker, you're an executor, like you got the ambition, you got the energy, like you're making things happen. But the curse is you're never satisfied. You're always aiming for the next level, always reaching, always, 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 right?
It's like
So
moving
it's
that
more
goal. What is
important.
it? Goalpost? The
Exactly. The goalpost just keeps getting pushed further and further and further. And it's like, Mija, like give yourself a second. You too thirsty. Go get a drink. Calm down for a second.
I love that you're saying this because I
You
I
know, like
I feel
live in
it.
the moment. Yeah. You gotta let yourself like live in the moment for a second.
No, it's, we're recording this on a Friday and I'm absorbing that energy. And I think it's a good reminder for me and for everyone in our community who's listening, who knows we are our worst critic. We are tougher on ourselves than on anyone else. We give everyone grace except ourselves. I mean, it's almost like it's a toxic pattern, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it is just like everything else. It has to become a routine. Like it has to become a part of your lifestyle, right? In order for you to like really tap in. Like it needs to be something like maybe it's like every Friday you're doing something to make sure you're celebrating. Or maybe literally you're putting on your calendar 15 minutes and that's your 15 minutes to tell yourself how amazing you are. Like figure out what the routine is to make it a part of you making your bed every day. When you make your bed every day, you need to be talking
That's
to
a win.
yourself. If you're going to make your bed every day, make it count, okay? Talk to yourself.
That's a win. That's a win.
Hey, talk to yourself.
So you've given us so many gems, but I have to ask. So I have seen your podcast. Um I have seen you, on interviews, and and I met you in person, which I loved your energy. And you always give off this, like, it's not euphoria, but it's like this good energy. Like it's infectious. Like I want to be around you because you literally, girl, you exude positivity. But I'm
Thank
going to
you.
be real here. I don't think anyone is positive and feeling great 365 days a year and 24/7. What do you do when you feel those moments? We all have them. When you feel like, you didn't get that contract. You're not getting as much traction as you want. What do you do when that negativity starts brewing? Because I think it's almost like, there's good and evil, right? And
Yeah,
there's always going to be that, even when you're positive as much as you can be, there always be those moments where negativity it's like a magnet and it can really drag you down. What do you
yeah.
do personally?
So, a funny story. Um, I remember a guy on social media a few years commenting on like one of my videos, and he's like, "You're so full of it. Like, there's no way you're happy every day. Like, you're selling people this dream, right?" And I was like, "That's fair because, yeah, of course, again, I'm human. You have your ebbs and flows, right? But the majority of the time, I'm pretty energetic. Like, you ask people in my circle, like, I'm pretty positive all the time. It's very rare that I am looking at the glass half empty instead of half full. But in those moments when it does occur, there are a couple of things I have in place. And one is going outside. Like, I'm
Ah,
not going to be on my couch. I'm not going to be stuffing my face and Netflix and chill. Like, I'm going outside. I get energy from being outside, being social. Like, I enjoy it. I love it. So identifying those things that give you joy and energy and using those as like your scapegoats when you're feeling down. Like go outside is one of my main things. And moving. Like when you move, like it shifts. It shifts the mood when you move. Ooh, it shifts the mood when you move.
Put it on a t-shirt.
On a t-shirt. But it's true. Like move your body. And then also having this badassery committee, like having these people. Like I had best friends who I call and I'm like crying after I had like a bad day and I'm just like over it because I'm over all of the bad days. And she's like, Victoria, I'm gonna need you to remind yourself of who you are right now. Like I'm gonna need you to cut it out. Right. So like having those people super, super important. And then I would say the last thing is talking to my dad. Like he brings me so much joy. He's like my North Star. And my dad is always positive, always energy. I get that from him. And my mom was like full of personality and energy as well. So whenever I'm like feeling low, I like call my dad, and the first thing he says when he picks up the phone, he's like, "Hi, darling, how are you?" And like immediately, I'm like, oh, "I'm so loved."
Oh, I
I
felt
really
that.
my mood. So figure out those things and pay attention. Like a lot of us are just roaming around like aimlessly and
Yeah,
not paying attention. Like pay attention and be intentional about like how you're showing up and how are you living your life. And don't let just things be like gone with the wind fabulous. Like pay attention to the signs and pay attention when things make you happy, when things make you feel alive, when things make you feel joyful, because those are the things like you want to double down on. Like life is meant to be lived, honey. Like you got to make
absolutely.
sure you're like doing as much of those things.
That is so
Yeah,
true.
I'm on one right now. I feel like I need to be at church.
You're like I said, you're amazing. Thank you so much for being here, because you really, I could feel the energy, and I needed it today. So the universe gives you what you need, and I needed you today. So thank you very much.
It's my pleasure.
Um we I try to end interviews with a message, a quote, or mantra for our community. I want to ask, what would be your call to action for anyone struggling with imposter syndrome and they just can't get out of their own way?
Hmm. My call to action would be is to create what I call a brag slide. And a brag slide consists of all the organizations you work for, all the clients that you've had, whenever you've been awarded something, a feature in a magazine, like things that you can brag about, put it all on one slide so that when you're feeling these moments of doubt, you revert back to the brag slide. I have a brag slide. I'm not telling you to do it, nothing that I'm not doing myself. That's how I know it works. So create this brag slide and push yourself, because sometimes we don't like to give ourselves props. Like we don't like to recognize what we've accomplished. And if you're one of those people, okay, then you need to go to the source that knows what you have done. Like go to those sources and ask them so that you can put it on your brag slide and revert to that brag slide when this imposter syndrome comes up. That's the action item. That's the
I love
homework.
that. I'm going to create my own, actually. I don't have one of
Your
those.
brag slide. Let's go.
Victoria, Jenn, thank you so much for being here today. Oh, I don't want to forget, please share with our community how they can find you.
Yes, so you can find me pretty much across all social media platforms at I am Victoria Jenn, Jenn. And please check out my podcast, Banking on Cultura. I have to say that slow because some people get it, some people don't. Check us out. We're on YouTube, all streaming platforms. And then, of course, if you want to catch me on the formal side, Victoria Jenn Rodriguez on LinkedIn. But please, if you find me, let me know that you came through the AW Confidential podcast so that I know, like, we family and like we in the
Yes,
community together. So please make sure you introduce
absolutely.
yourself.
And she's amazing. Her energy on her IG and her LinkedIn is just the same as she is here. So if you need some positive vibes, community, definitely hit up Victoria Jenn. And thank you all for listening to this energetic episode of AW Confidential. I'll talk to you soon. Bye.